I don't give a where I play, as long as I go number one in the draft.
From the Erie Otters, Connor McDavid.
From the London Knights, Mitch Marner.
From the Western Hockey League's Brandon Wheat Kings, Nolan Patrick.
This is Tracking the Draft with Craig Button.
He checks an enormous amount of boxes. Nobody in this draft did more with less. I absolutely love him. It's not his skills that anybody's concerned about. It's that playing attitude. And quite frankly, it's really poor.
Speeding towards the future of the NHL.
From the U.S. Development Program, Jacob Truba.
From Färjestad of the Swedish Elite League, Jonas Brodin.
From the Boston U Terriers, Brady Tkachuk.
He could play in the NHL next year. He's one of those guys.
Here's your host, Dean Millard.
Hello there, and welcome back to Tracking the Draft, Season 3, Episode 6, where the stars of tomorrow are discovered and discussed. My name is Dean Millard, and the Director of Scouting, Craig Button for TSN, will be along very shortly. This show is proudly broadcast on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. You're watching it on YouTube right now. Check out the other great shows we have, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, or, of course, hockey, and more great programming and more great sports on the way with UFFS. It is great to chat with you again. It's been a while since we've had one of these episodes, unfortunately, but it is awesome to be back chatting again, and here's who we'll be chatting about. Top shelf talent today will bring us Brad Lambert, ranked number 18 on the Craig's list. In the next wave, we'll be focusing on a guy from Guelph, ranked number 47 by Craig Button, Matthew Poitwa. And in Time Machine, we will be going back to last year's draft. First overall, Owen Power, Olympic bound, and more. Man, Owen Power has an opportunity to get 2/3 of the way to the Triple Gold Club before playing in the NHL, which is pretty rare. And the one that he won't have before he plays in the NHL is the World Juniors, because that got canceled. Maybe he picks that up in the summertime. The Triple Gold Club in a calendar year, that is pretty impressive. Craig Button joins us on the UFHL hotline. Check out www.uffsports.com and you can become a scout. Track the same players that Craig does in the NHL, that will be in the NHL. In this format, you own the game, so get in the game. Once again, check out the website, www.uffsports.com, the home of the ultimate sports NFTs. And of course, if you want to be a part of UFSN, just send an email to UFSN@uffsports.com to get your programming on our network. All right, we have a wonderful show lined up for you, chatting with a number, or chatting about a number of great players and some more great stuff, as always, with the one and only Craig Button. Let's bring him in right now.
Here he is, the Director of Scouting for TSN, former GM of the Calgary Flames, and a Stanley Cup champion with the Dallas Stars. Plus, he's a sharp-dressed man with a heart of gold and a passion to match it. Craig Button.
Well, Craig, it's been a while since we chatted, and the last time we did, we were so excited about Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors and, of course, the World Junior Tournament, and we got to experience 3 glorious days of UFWJ, and then, unfortunately, things were canceled. But I can tell you, everybody involved in that tournament was so excited, and I imagine even you were excited watching some of the players on East End play.
Oh, well, there's no question you're excited about the tournament, and certainly with a connection with East End, you're watching the different players and you're going, oh boy, and I'm doing broadcasts and I'm going, oh, that's good, good play, like, kind of, making sure I don't come up on the mic and going, yeah, like, when a good play happens, you just got to be calling it. But, it was a month ago on December 26th when the tournament began. And so it seems like so long ago, Dean, but at the same time, it's fresh in our memories. And I think you pointed this out. It was a great way to enjoy the tournament in a different way. It's a different way for people to connect to the tournament. And, with the depth of talent across the various countries, I'll tell you what, it creates a real dynamic interest, in the tournament. So, I mean, that's to me, that's a winner. That's a winner. And, I can't wait till next year in Russia. And if we get a scheduling of the 2022 World Junior, well, that'll be nice too. But at the very least, we got some good players ready for next year, Dean. Like, we got some good players.
I'm excited. I know Ian Constable is excited about the future of East End year after year. I would love to have a summer tournament and just for some of those kids to get a chance to do it. But at the very least, as you mentioned, the tournament in Russia next year. And I can't wait already to draft the players that are going to age out and replace those guys. But, I looked at our roster all the way through that, and it was built to win now, but also to give us a nice boost next year.
Well, it's no different than an NHL team. You want to keep your sights on the present, but you can't lose sight of the future. And I think that we did a real nice job of making sure that we could be competitive and, finish with the gold around our necks with the team we selected. And I know with the players we got coming back next year and the 5 futures we did select, we're in good shape.
Indeed. All right, let's look at the future of the 2022 draft, and we're starting with our top shelf talent today. Brad Lambert, right winger he's played with the Pelicans and JYP in La Liga, and Brennen Kopp has this prospect. He also is the GM of the Bentley Jacks, so there could be some symmetry there at the draft. 2 goals, 4 assists in 26 games in the Pro League, ranked number 18 on your list. And this was a guy who we saw at the World Juniors for just that short time. Did you see a difference, more confident Brad Lambert than maybe you have in the past, or what did you see him from the short time you saw him at the World Juniors?
What I saw, Dean, was a player that was more at ease, just being himself. And the draft, impacts players in different ways. And I've seen it for years. And it's easy for me to say, oh, just relax, just play your game. But the players know they're being watched very closely. They know they're under the proverbial microscope. And they want to do their best every single time. And I would suggest that at times they put too much pressure on themselves. And I think Brad early on in the year, was a player that, wasn't really at ease with his game. And I think in the month, maybe 3 weeks leading up to the World Junior, he just settled in. He's an excellent skater. He's a player that, when he's moving through the neutral zone, whether with the puck, into the offensive zone with or without the puck, he's recognizing where he can create advantages and where he can take opportunity to produce offensively. And I think that at times earlier in this season, in the scouting season, it was almost like he had blinders on. And he not that you ever forget, but you're trying to show the scouts everything in your toolbox on every single shift. And the players just don't have that. What they have is a certain element or certain elements in their game that make them unique and make them special and make them promising. And I think with Brad, and like a lot of other players, he just got away from it a little bit. But I think that leading into the World Junior, he was in a place where he was doing the things that you've seen previously at the World Junior. He looked again like a real good player, and I think he is a really good prospect. And you've heard me say this before about Brad. I think Brad is going to benefit by playing at higher levels with smarter players, with more skilled players. They're going to take advantage of his abilities. And the SM Liga is challenging. It's challenging for any player. certainly for a 17, 18-year-old player, like Brad, and expectations, sometimes you run into a little bit of a speed bump, and I think that's what happened with Brad.
You bring up a really good point. There is more pressure than ever on athletes today. And fittingly, we're here talking on Bell Let's Talk Day, and I think we need to talk more about the mental health of athletes. And by no means am I saying that Brad Lambert has any mental health challenges. I'm just talking about in players in general. I mean, you bring up a good point when you say don't feel the pressure. It's like telling somebody like me who deals with depression and anxiety, don't be depressed anymore. Just be happy. It just doesn't happen that way. And sometimes the players do put so much pressure on themselves. And I think the more we talk about that with players and the more they maybe open up, they can get some help. Certainly wasn't like that for a long time in my lifetime, but it's getting there. And that's a real important thing for everybody to remember, how much pressure these kids might be putting on themselves.
Dean, the word I use is we have to remove the stigma. There's a stigma when we talk about mental health. Mental health is no different than any type of other health, your well-being. And, we're talking about high-performing athletes. We're talking about very gifted athletes and athletes that have sacrificed a lot to reach this point in time. And there's going to be times when they feel anxious. There's going to be times when they feel that pressure, but it's a pressure and it's an anxiety of wanting to be at their very best. So what we need to do is understand that and help them through it. It's no different than a player having a bruised hand or a sore shoulder. We help them deal with it and understand, okay, you're not gonna hurt yourself anymore, but we're gonna give you the support there so that you can play and get through this little period of physical discomfort. And mental discomfort is going to occur at every time. And players, so often of the time, they are their own harshest critics. They are hardest on themselves than anybody else can be. I know that Robin Regeer, longtime NHL player, you didn't need to tell Robin Regeer he made a mistake. Robin Regeer knew he'd made a mistake long before anybody had to tell him. But what you had to do with Robin was just calm him down and just say, hey, Robin, did you try to make that mistake? No. Okay, so let's go play. Right. And if you come down, like just as a coach, you go, hey, Robin, what were you doing there? He's already hard on himself. And now he's like, oh, boy, now I'm a little bit more tense. Right. You got to remove that tension. You got to remove that. You have to understand by, being around the players, listening to the players, understanding what they may need. And everybody, Dean, needs something different. It's not like there's a one size fits all. And I think when we talk about mental health, it's no different than physical performance. Mental health helps you in your mental performance, and understanding that is incredibly important. And removing the stigma is just as important.
Well said, for sure. So let's talk about Brad Lambert. You mentioned his skating. Do you say that's maybe his most dominant skill? And when we talk about a great skater, that can be many things. You and I talk about a speedster, a guy that can change it up. How does Brad Lambert use his skating to his advantage?
Well, yeah, and one thing I want to preface my answer with is that everybody's a good skater now. It's funny when I go back and I look at my scouting notes from 20 years ago, because I keep all my books and whatnot, and you look at skating, you go, oh, skating, okay, stride is okay, room to improve and everything. Like, Dean, if I see somebody that I don't think is a good skater, like, I don't care. It's not good enough. And I'll give you an example, okay? There was a player drafted high in the first round, really good, solid junior player. And you looked at him and you watched him and you said, geez, he's got a lot of good elements. And you looked at his skate and you go, his skating, and this is a player that was drafted over 10 years ago. And you looked at his skating and you said, he can improve, he can get better, he will get better. And you knew the player, and you knew the player was going to work at it. You knew the player was going to work and work and work. Here was the problem. As hard as the player worked, as the game got faster, he could never catch up with his skating. As much as he worked at his skating, as much as he put every single effort, used every single resource available to him, he was never able to get his skating to a level which would allow him to be a good player and a productive contributing player at the NHL level. So when we talk about skating now, the reason I bring that up is because you have to be a good skater. Now, as we go to Brad's got really good speed. And he's got attacking speed. So what is attacking speed? So this is a good example. Attacking speed is when you're carrying the puck and you're attacking at the defense. You're attacking at defenders. And they have to respect that attacking speed because they have to protect against getting beat, and they have to make sure that they can, close the gap or be able to recover if you get side by side. And you think about Timo Solani, and you know Timo Solani very well. Darren Hatcher had one of the best lines I ever heard about Timo Solani. He said, when you were playing against Timo Solani, if you were even with him, you were 2 steps behind him. And because Timo had attacking speed. And Brad's not Timo Solani, but he's got attacking speed. He can put defenders back on their heels. Then you go to the next part of his skating. He can change pace. He's got quickness, and he's got quickness in stride. So he can speed up. So he can come at you, and because of that attacking speed, you have to be able to, maybe back off a little. Well, he can slow down a little bit and use the space in front of him. But if he sees that you're up on him a little bit, he can go to a higher gear in stride and get behind you. So now his skating poses real challenges for defenders. And, players that skate at the same speed, Dean, it's like a pitcher that only has a 1-speed fastball. It only has a 1-pitch fastball. Everybody can hit the fastball,
right?
But when you change speeds and you don't know what's coming at you, you keep the batter off balance. Brad keeps opponents off balance because of that skating, right? And then because he when I talk about an attacking player through the neutral zone into the offensive zone, whether he has the puck or he doesn't have the puck, he's sizing up the situation. So he knows how to get open. He knows how to draw opponents to him and then dish the puck off. So when you look at Brad's overall game, and he's got a real strong foundation of skating, but he's got a real strong foundation of understanding of the game. And that's when I say when he gets with better players, some players, at lower levels, they see the game in dimensions that players that they play with don't. But when you move up the levels, you're going to be playing with players that do see the game in similar dimensions. And I think that's where Brad can really take advantage at the next level.
All right, let's move to the next wave now, talking about Matthew Poitwa, a center with Guelph in the OHL. CanWest Scouting has this young prospect, 10 goals, 15 assists in 32 games, and ranked number 47 on the Craigslist. And he didn't get to play last year, which is, a lot of guys were in that situation. So that would have been his rookie season. So far, having a decent rookie season in Guelph this year. Tell me about Matthew.
How about if I start with a comparable? So when I watch Matthew play, I'm going to start with the comparable. My comparable is Brandon Sutter. So I look at Brandon Sutter. Brandon Sutter's had a real solid NHL career. It's not a star NHL career. I believe he was drafted 12th overall. I didn't look back at my notes, but I'm pretty sure he was drafted 12th overall. But a real smart, effective player. So what prevented him from being a star player? Skating. Matthew is a solid skater. He's not a great skater. I don't think he's got the ability to be a great skater. But because he's a good enough skater and he's got strength in his skating with respect to, getting to places defensively and offensively, because he's really smart and because he's competitive, I think that, he becomes a player that can be really effective in certain situations. But to create offense and be that real top-notch offensive player or even a solid offensive player, you got to have that ability to threaten with your skating. Brandon Sutter never had that. And when I watch Matthew play, and it goes back to what I talked about earlier with skating. You got to be skating now. There's no room for if he does this and does that, maybe he has a chance. Like I said, you're not a good skater. You're off my. You're going to have a tough time getting consideration from me, and I think you're going to have a tough time getting consideration from NHL scouts. So that's the way I see Matthew. Competitive, smart, can kill penalties, win face-offs, chip in some offense and from different areas of the lineup, but not a star or frontline player.
It's so interesting, that comparison, because what I had read about Matthew going into this was hardworking, reliable, things like that. And that describes Sutter. And, I go back to when Brent was coaching Brandon in Red Deer, and he told me one time, he said, I could have let him out there and played, and he could have scored 35, 40 goals, but he knew Brandon Sutter was not going to be that player at the next level. So he worked on him to become a player at the next level. And I think that Brandon Sutter has had a good career. And if Matthew Poitwa turns out to be a Brandon Sutter, a reliable player, maybe not a frontline player, but every team in the draft is looking for all different kind of players. And I think that's a good example of a guy you want on your team.
Absolutely it is, Dean. Dean, one of the things, and maybe it's taken me too long to come to this realization, but I'm there, is that there's 32 first-round draft picks. And everybody talks about, the first round, how good is the first round? And, oh, my God, we got this guy. We can't believe we got this guy. We had him rated a lot higher. If you get, and I'm just going to talk about the first round. If you can get a player that plays regularly in the NHL out of the first round, you have done an excellent job in the draft. Because that's, there's so many players that despite promise and potential, don't realize it. That's just a fact. I mean, all you got to do is just look back at it. Everybody's looking for a star. Everybody's looking for this diamond in the rough, and that's all good. All I'm saying is if you get a regular NHLer out of the first round, be really, really happy. Be really, really happy. Scouts beat themselves up. Oh, we could have had that guy. I liked him. I should have pushed a little bit harder. But if you got a regular player out of it and everything, then that's good. Obviously, at the upper part of the first round, it's more higher end quality, more star quality. So you're going to be able to get that star quality ostensibly out of the top part of the first round. But I can tell you this, Dean, when I look at this year's draft, and I can tell you right now at this point in time, this doesn't mean that it's ultimately how it's going to turn out, but I can tell you this on this day. I see maybe 8 or 9 guys with star quality in this draft. 8 or 9. 8 or 9. Mm-hmm. Well, that means that there's over 20 players that are going to be drafted in the first round that I don't see as star quality. But, realistic expectations, realistic assessments and evaluations are real key to scouting.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You talk about expectations all the time. When you're looking at a player, what are your realistic expectations? And, teams it's not an all-star game every night where you got 4 first lines. You have players that fit in different roles. And time again, we see a guy go in the first round, maybe the middle, maybe the back end, and he doesn't turn into a superstar and people are labeling him. Well, that happens. Just like third rounders, seventh rounders, fifth rounders do become stars. It's also the development, but it's also the expectations you have with that player going up to the podium.
Well, and understanding, okay, this is what we see in this player, and this is where we think he can get, and and again, a lot of times, and it happens in the scouting world. You draft a player, and you think that he's going to be this. Well, as you're watching and evaluating over time, the first thing you got to do, did we evaluate properly for what he was? Because maybe it's not the player that was not making it. Maybe you didn't assess right. So understanding, your own assessment and self-scouting really is what it is. I always talk about this, the draft happens, and then you go into summer camps, and then you go into the next year early on in the season, and the draft is not even 3 and 4 months old, right? But what it gives you an opportunity is to go, geez, that guy's a little bit better than I thought. Oh, geez, that guy might not be as good as I thought. That's when I talk about self-scouting. And, we talk about, that player didn't make it. Well, maybe you assessed the player wrong. Maybe you looked at the player and you weren't realistic. But, if you're not realistic in saying this is what we're getting, and let's say you draft a player and you go, well, we think he can play in 2 years, and we think he can be a 25 goal scorer. Well, he hasn't made it in 2 years, right? He's trying to find his way, and now you're disappointed in him. Why? Maybe his timeline for development wasn't what you thought it should be. And, just because he hasn't reached that at that point in time doesn't mean he won't. And teams make that mistake every single year. And I can tell you what, I don't think it's ever going to change regardless of who's scouting, what you're using in your evaluations. It's not going to change.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Craig joins us on the UFHL hotline. Scouting is a huge part of the platform, lifeblood of franchises in the UFHL. Any free agent goes through a scout, and the prospects all come through scouts as well. So get in the game where you own the game. Start putting your scouting talent to good use. Become an independent scout or form a partnership with an existing franchise. You can reach out for more information at the UFHL on Twitter as we continue to grow in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, and an extension of that is the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors that we were both a part of. Okay, let's move on now to Time Machine. And, we were just talking about looking back in time. We don't have to go back too far, just to last year's draft. Owen Power, who was drafted first, the defenseman with Michigan in the Big Ten. CanWest Generals drafted him first overall in the UFHL last year. 3 goals, 23 assists in 26 games this year. And I'll ask you about his World Junior short stint that we got to see from him. Pretty dominating. I think that's one of the words that we might use, and as expected as well. But, did you see any kind of difference in him at the World Juniors, or was it the same steady Owen Power?
Well, let me just add one other word: steady, dominant Owen Power. Okay, so I don't care if you're playing in the World Junior Tournament. I don't care if you're playing on a Friday night in the Big Ten. I don't care if you're playing on a Wednesday night at 11:30 p.m. at night. Owen Power is going to be a dominant player. Named to Canada's Olympic team. Dean, I see him as the best player outside the NHL. That shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. But now you're going to the Olympics with this defenseman that can control the game, that can command the game, that can dominate the game. He's already won a gold medal at the World Championships playing 20 plus minutes. So he's almost a year older since that experience, and he's just that much better. And for Claude Julien, the head coach of Team Canada, for him to know that, wow, I got a defenseman here that can play 20 plus minutes, control the game. And I'll tell you what that is for Claude Julien. That's comfort. That's massive comfort. And so it doesn't matter where Owen Power is in the game. It doesn't matter what the situation in the game is. It doesn't matter what he's confronted with. Owen Power is rock solid pillar of strength. And offensively, defensively, under the forecheck, in transition, penalty killing, power play, it doesn't matter where you put him. He's a dominant player and the best player outside the NHL. And you know what? People are going to be able to tune into the Olympics and watch this terrific young player. I mean, the interesting thing for me is, going back to Michigan after the Olympics, probably turning pro right after that with the Buffalo Sabres. I've watched Owen since he was 15 years old. I saw him in the OHL and minor midget, U15, playing in Ontario. And again, we talk about, the ability to skate and round out, and he's a bigger player. But all he needed was time. And the beautiful thing about Owen is he recognized that about himself. He wasn't trying to get someplace yesterday. He was trying to get someplace tomorrow as best prepared as he can be. And I'll tell you what, the Buffalo Sabres have an awesome prospect.
Well, I love that this player decided, I'm going to go back to college and I'm going to work on my game and improve it even more. Even though I was the #1 player and all the accolades that come with it, he recognized he could get even better. So when you saw him at Michigan this year, was it just, that team was almost a man amongst boys, but what was he like at the college level this year compared to last year?
Well, what I would say is just a player that was that was more assertive. And not that Owen wasn't assertive, but when you progress and you gain confidence. So what does he gain confidence with? He gains confidence by having the experience of a freshman season at Michigan. Then he gains confidence by having the experience of playing at the World Championships and not just playing, but from the start of that tournament to the end, the gold medal game and winning the gold medal, he just became more and more important. So that builds confidence to where he becomes the first overall pick in the NHL draft, to where he comes back to Michigan with a clear idea about, like, this is what's best for me to prepare. Keep in mind, prepare for the challenges of the next level. And so when you're watching, when I say he became more assertive, it was built on that confidence of him knowing and having those great experiences of saying, hey, listen, not only do I know what I can do, I know I can do more. And what I saw in Owen Power was a player that was, I mean, he was already significant in the game prior to coming back to Michigan for a sophomore season. But he's even more dominant and more assertive and more of a factor in the game. That's maturity. And it's no different than what I saw with Quinn Hughes, who was the 7th overall pick. It was no different than what I saw from Cale Makar, who was the 4th overall pick. That's why I say, Adam Fox, the NHL, if you're not ready, Dean, it will chew you up and spit you out like nothing. And if you're not prepared for those challenges and understanding, what those challenges are and how to best prepare, you're going to have struggles. That's the bottom line. You're playing against the best players on the planet. So Owen had a nice little path here in front of him with Makar and Hughes and Fox to say, I'm not in a rush to get anywhere. The Vancouver Canucks were anxious to get Quinn Hughes after they drafted him 7th overall. Colorado was anxious to get Cale Makar after they drafted him 4th overall. And the Buffalo Sabres were probably anxious to try to get Owen Power. The best thing for all those teams was those old players all went back for their sophomore year. And now look at Makar. Arguably, Makar, Fox, Hughes, they're 3 of the best defensemen in the National Hockey League. Owen Power's going to be in that conversation in the very near future.
Yeah, and I think it's a good lesson for a lot of players that they don't, even if they're the first overall pick, that they do not have to play in the NHL right away. And I think the neat thing with Owen Power is, if things go really well for him at the Olympics, he's 2/3 of the way to the Triple Gold Club without playing in the NHL yet. And the one that they usually get first, he could get in the summertime if they do get it back. I mean, the Triple Gold Club in a calendar year, that would be impressive before a guy, well, I guess he probably is going to play in the NHL before that, but still very, very impressive.
Well, it is. And, when you think about the Olympics with a chance to win the Olympic gold medal, number one, Owen's getting that opportunity at an age where that opportunity would not have come if the NHL players were going. So he's number one, getting that opportunity. Number two, the Olympics only affords you the opportunity to win a gold medal every 4 years. So now he's going to get that at 19. Ostensibly, he's going to get it at 23 and 27 and 31 and maybe even at 35. Well, that's a whole lot of chances, and depending on what happens in his NHL career with Buffalo and where they go in terms of becoming a Stanley Cup contender, when you check that box of having an Olympic gold medal, knowing you only got a chance every 4 years, and now you're getting an early crack at it, pretty impressive for Owen Power.
No doubt. Craig, it has been great to chat with you again. I look forward to the second half of the hockey season as we race towards the draft, and then, of course, the Olympics, where we'll be watching Owen Power and others. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a great week.
Always a pleasure, Dean. You have a great week also.
This is a serious message.
Craig Button joins us on the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Hotline. Become a scout and make money while providing prospects to the Ultimate Franchise Hockey League.
What you talking about, mister?
Pay that man his money. I'm your huckleberry.
Check out the details at www.uffsports.com.
It's serious. I like it a lot. I said we got a winner.
UFFS. You own the game.
All right, in the next little while, we'll also be bringing you Craig's Counsel, where Craig will will give you some scouting tips and also some fun stories. This is really, really important for those in the scouting program with Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, or anyone who aspires to become a scout. If you have a specific question, email trackingthedraft@gmail.com, and we will add it to the list of topics that we already have. We've done a couple of these. This is our third season, so we've done this a couple of years before, and we still have some questions that unfortunately we didn't get to. So please, if you have a question for Craig, or even a story that you want to hear about a specific player or draft pick, trackingthedraft@gmail.com is how you get in touch with us. And of course, as mentioned, this show proudly broadcast on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. We are growing, just like UFFS. It's your one-stop fantasy sports shop. And if you have a fantasy sports show, we would love for you to join our network and be a part of the team. Big things are happening. Email UFSN@UFFsports.com if you would like to get in touch with us, or you can follow @UFS Network on Twitter, and their DMs are open. All right, that is going to wrap things up for another episode here on Tracking the Draft, Wednesday, January 26th. Thank you so much to Craig Button for joining me, as he always does. It is awesome to chat with him, as we do each and every week. His passion, his knowledge, and of course, his time. Thank you for you, the listener and the viewer, for watching this program. It's great to be back on and talking about the future of the game. This has been Tracking the Draft with Craig Button. I'm Dean Millard, where the stars of tomorrow are discovered and discussed right here on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, proudly presented by Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. Have a great rest of your week.